Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I thought I'd pop on and share with you a new project that I decided to start this year. So I had done some daily scripture writing years ago. For several years I did it in a planner, and then I just kind of got bored with it and it kind of pittered out, and I set it aside for some time. But I decided to jump back in and do things a little bit differently this time. So I'll be sharing with you how I'm working on that, and I'll kind of show you how I'm setting up this week's spread. But I am working with this set of printables that has a daily scripture writing plan. I will link this down below. There are tons of them out there. There are free ones, paid for ones, all different kinds of styles, different topics, all kinds of things. You just need to search out and find out what works for you. Like I said, this one's from Beloved Society. I'll link it down below. I like this one in particular because it's only Monday through Friday. So it gives you the weekend off to either set up your week spread if you're doing it in a similar way that I'm doing. It kind of gives you some time to do that. Or if you have a hectic, crazy, busy life, then you can get caught up on the weekends or whatever. I just like that this one isn't, Monday through Saturday or, Sunday to Sunday. However, it's a little bit smaller. Now, I don't treat this as like an in-depth study. You can, but I have plenty of other studies I'm doing, other devotionals I'm doing. So I only write these verses out. I don't go into deep verse study or word study or anything like that. This is just getting me into the word for a few minutes each day, writing out the verse and trying to start committing verses to memory. And that's kind of what this process does for me. So I will have that link down below for you guys. But in the past, I've done it in a planner, I've done it in a notebook, I've done a couple different things, but this time I decided to go ahead and do it in a traveler's notebook insert. So this one here is from Felicity Jane, and these are hands down my absolute favorite traveler's notebook inserts, especially for a project like this where you're doing a lot of writing. The pages in here are so silky smooth and are so nice to write on. They are thicker than regular copy paper, but not super, super thick. So if you are somebody who's doing a lot of mixed media techniques, a lot of paint, a lot of wet things, then this may not be the paper for you. There's other notebooks out there that might work better for you. But for a project like this where you're doing a lot of writing or memory keeping, something like that, I think these are great. They are a 30-page insert, so you can do just over a month if you're doing the scripture writing plan. But I always have an extra one of these in my purse to take notes in, sermon notes, grocery lists, all kinds of things go into these notebooks for me. So I decided to grab one from my stash. If this one is still available, I will link it down below for you guys. And I just decided to set myself up with some pretty things because that's what I like. And that kind of helps keep me engaged as I sit down here each day to write out my verses. I want something pretty to look at. Is this necessary? No, you definitely can just get a regular binder and write out your verses. But this just kind of gets me excited to get into it. I love the process on the weekends of setting up the weekly spread. And I don't know, it's just been fun for me. So, and again, it's only 30 days. So after, you'll get partway through February in here. If I decide to change it up and do something different or use different products, I have the space in the room to do that with another insert or something like that. So I'm primarily using the Madison collection from Felicity Jane. That will be linked down below for you guys. Those are affiliate links, just heads up. But I just did my title page here, and I wanted to share kind of how I've been working through this to give you guys some ideas. So for those of you who are not pocket journalers and aren't quite sure how to use the journaling cards, here I just took two of the journaling cards and just layered them up as a foundation for my title and my little girl and that kind of thing. So you do not have to use these for pocket scrapbooking or to even journal, notes or prayers or verses on. They can just be layering elements. And so that's what I did here. This one here is from the Madison collection. I think this pink one might be from the Jill collection maybe. And then I have this Beloved Society girl. This is a stamp set. I will link it down below. I also have a Tip Tuesday video sharing how I do these painted and paper pieced girls. I used a couple of different papers from Felicity Jane to do this. This is a great time to pull out this page here. So this is the packaging that comes with your pattern papers when you order from Felicity Jane. And so these small little blocks are samples of the paper for that package, but they're great sizes for doing things like the little bow or little shirts because these are scaled down. The print is scaled down. It's not as big as it is on the full 12 by 12. So don't throw this away, use it up. I'm also going to show you another way that you could use this, so I paper pieced her, used some puffy stickers, a label, and then just wrote out scripture writing plan. Does not have to be fancy and pretty and nice, but I did kind of embellish it a little bit just because it's fun. So for the first couple days here, I had this giant stamp set. Now this is not from Felicity Jane. I think that this is sold out. I'll try to link it down below if it's not, but I just stamped it on some of the Felicity Jane papers, cut them out. You could also trace numbers onto your pattern papers and cut them out to indicate the different days. Gave myself some lines to journal the verses on, and then I have an overabundance of these labels. So I like to keep my Felicity Jane die cuts in this storage system here. This is the Bloom storage from We Are Memory Keepers. This is the large one. They do have a smaller one. I don't live in a world where my things can fit in a smaller storage. I actually need a second one of these because it is getting ridiculously stuffed full. And that's kind of what inspired me to really start this project. Yes, I want to be in scripture every day. Yes, I want to be writing scripture, but I also want to use up some of my stash and put it to work. I find that I hoard a lot of my ephemera from Felicity Jane because it's so pretty. I don't want to commit it to a project, but this way it's committed. I can see it, it's being used, and then I can move on to the next collection. So this has different compartments that I've shown this before. I've kind of broken up into different categories like labels and chipboard pieces and tabs and that kind of thing. But my label section was getting so full, it was actually preventing this from opening. So I have gone through and pulled out a bunch of them for this project and just keep it very, very simple. I did a little bit of an embellishment cluster down here just to fill up the blank space, but isn't, needed necessarily. This week was even simpler. It was just the numbers on the pattern papers and the labels. That's it. And then just wrote out the scriptures. So for this next upcoming week, I'm going to go ahead and lay it out and kind of put everything where it needs to be. And then that way, Monday through Friday, it can just pop in and write out the verse. All the creative part is already done and set up for me. So off camera, I did a little bit of prep ahead of time. I did go ahead and take the solid cardstocks from the pattern paper collection and die cut out the numbers. So rather than use big numbers, I'm going to use smaller numbers now, but you could also like spell out the number, 13, 15, whatever it is. And this would be a great time to use these pieces here. You can die cut out of here and use up this paper. And like I said, the smaller print works great for smaller size things like this. But I die cut them out of several of the different solid cardstock pieces from the Madison collection. And then I also die cut the numbers, the exact same numbers from a piece of craft foam. Now this particular craft foam has adhesive on the back side, so I'm going to make my own thickers from those die cut papers. And then I pulled together a variety of labels from past Felicity Jane kits, but I wanted to kind of push myself to use the Madison stamp set for this week. It's got this fun little floral cluster. There's my mask I'll show you guys how to use, but it's got this fun floral cluster that I wanted to kind of play with because there were only a few of the die cut pieces of the florals, and I wanted to have tons of florals for this week. So I'll show you how to layer up that flower and just create a really simple layout. It's not going to be overly embellished. I don't want anything too chunky because I'm going to be writing in here. If I use a whole bunch of super, super chunky embellishments, it's going to make it difficult to write. So this is going to be a simple project, and that's the whole point. I want it to look simple, but this will kind of give you guys some encouragement for how to use maybe some random bits and bobs that you have laying on your desk, or maybe to give you some creative ways to use pattern paper. If you've never picked up pattern paper before because you're a Bible journaler and just haven't found a good way to use it yet, I kind of am having a lot of fun playing with pattern paper in different ways in this project. So let me go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and we'll put this week's layout together. Okay, so I apparently am loving the Madison collection because I seem to be running out of some of the ephemera pieces. So I decided to make my own floral clusters using this stamp set. So I've pulled out a variety of inks. It doesn't really matter what inks you're using for this. I was just picking ones from my stash that had colors similar to the Madison collection. So those could be pigment inks, dye inks, whatever it might be. So I'm going to start by stamping that solid base of the floral, and then I also stamped that solid piece on a sticky note and fussy cut it out, and that's going to be my mask. So I can lay that sticky note over my floral base, and now I can go in with the leaf stamp, and now it looks like the leaf is behind that flower base. If you want to see step-by-step details, those photos are over on the blog as well if you have questions about how to do that. But really, really simple masking. And then I'm just going to go in and layer these inks up. I am making sure I'm drying my inks in between each layer. That way the color stays true when I layer the next color over the top of it. And it doesn't, get muddy or bleed together and that kind of thing. So I stamped the second piece, and then I prepped the floral with my EK Success powder tool, and then I stamped the center dots with some clear sticky ink, applied some white embossing powder, and then I can go ahead and heat set that, and that's going to give me some embossed details to the center of the flower. This way I can layer white on top of colors, which can be kind of hard with stamp inks, but also gives just some texture and jazzes up those die cut pieces. Fussy cut those out and I am ready to go. So here I'm taking the paper versions of the numbers that I die cut out, and I'm sticking those through my Xyron sticker maker. This just applies adhesive to the entire back side of each one of these numbers. That way they're easier to adhere to the craft foam. Craft foam can be a little tricky with adhesives, and I found this works really well to do it this way. If you do not want the bulk of the foam, you can skip the foam and just go straight to this step here where you're pulling these numbers off of the backing, and now these are stickers, so you can stick these directly down to the page and you're good to go. But I wanted the added oomph of the foam just to add some dimension and interest to these pieces. And this project, again, is just a good way for me to experiment and play. And, I hadn't done this in a while, and so now this technique is in my mind and fresh, and I've worked out any kinks. And so when it goes next to a bigger project, or a project that's a little more detailed, I can go to this technique of creating these foam stickers, and I've done it before. I know what I need to do. I know the product I need, and that kind of thing, and I'm comfortable with it the next time I go to use it, if that makes sense. So I created all my little foam numbers there, and now I can start building up my clusters. So I'm just kind of playing around with spacing, how I want things layered. Initially, I didn't think that I was going to do any stamping directly on the page because I didn't want to deal with any bleed through. Now, these pages are, thick enough that when you're using pigment inks, you don't really have to worry about bleed through and that kind of thing. So I do end up coming in and adding some stamp details here in a minute. But like I said, that craft foam is adhesive backed, so I can just pull the backing off of the numbers, and they're like little personalized foam stickers. I love that. Now I am going in and adding my lines ahead of time. I'm just using a paint card or a gift card to, give myself a guide as I draw those lines in. So I'm looking up each one of the verses ahead of time to see kind of the length of the verse. But if you don't want to go through all that, you could just leave it blank and then draw in your lines when you sit down for the day to write it out. But I'm kind of a control freak, and I wanted to make sure that all my spacing is good. So I look it up as I go. And so I'm actually looking at these verses twice throughout the week. The first time on the weekend when I set up my layout, and then the second time each day when I go to write out the verse for that day. So here I pulled out the Elizabeth stamp set, and it does have a couple of these smaller floral images that are very similar to the small florals in the Madison collection. So I'm going to, again, pull out those inks just to stamp a few of these flowers, just to bring in more color. And I didn't want it too plain. I don't know. I just kind of get on a wave with these and with these layouts like this, and just kind of embellish to all craziness. And then other weekends, I just do a couple things and keep it really simple and call it good. So I like using a project like this, and it could be scripture writing, it could be writing out quotes, it could be working in a planner, whatever it might be, but something like this that where you're not documenting, priceless family photos. A project like this that's a little bit more relaxed gives you the room to explore and play and practice. So I can practice my paper clustering and layering and color combinations and different techniques and things like that, and kind of figure out and work out the kinks and find what I like. And then that way, when I go to a project like a scrapbooking page or like a Bible journaling page, I have this tool belt filled with techniques that I'm comfortable with, colors that I'm comfortable with, product that I'm comfortable with, because I've played with it in a project like this where it's a little bit more laid back, and I don't mind if things get get messed up or if things are imperfect, and that's okay. And so a lot of people ask me, they want a formula for how to paper cluster or how to do something. I would just say do this. Find a project that gives you room to practice and to play. And that's really how you get those skills down, is just the repetition, doing it over and over again. And now the next time I go to create a project, I'm not going to fuss when creating, numbers or letters like this with the foam. I know the product I need to use. I know the steps it takes to put it together, and it's going to make those future projects go along a little bit faster because I spent the time on a project like this. And it's not just a pointless projects. I am still getting in the Word every day. I'm writing down verses every day, so there is some purpose to it. But some of you might be looking at this and are like, Lindsey, the embellishment is over the top, not needed, waste of time. Why are you doing this? And that is why. This is just a practice space for me, and it just happens to be pretty and fun when I'm done with it. They're not always pretty and fun. Sometimes there's failures, and you know what? That's okay. I only have to look at it for a week, and then the next week I get to start fresh, do something different, use something different, and learn from those mistakes that I may have made on that layout. So I really would encourage you to find a project like this that gives you that space to just play and to create. So on screen here, I'm really just repeating the same steps. I'm kind of laying things down to figure out my spacing, and then going in and adding stamping if I need to. Again, the stamping is just bringing in some more color and kind of trying to balance out, I want equal amounts of yellow on one side and red on the other side and oranges. And while my stamp inks aren't perfect matches for the color from the Madison collection, I think that it's close enough that it works okay. And again, just drawing in my lines. You could use a stamp for this. You could freehand it. Again, just allow yourself some room to try out different things and find what works for you in a project like this. And you can see, because I looked up these verses ahead of time, I know, for day 16, I'm going to need more lines than I needed for, say day 13 or something like that. For the labels, those are going to get stamped with the Books of the Bible stamp from Illustrated Faith. I will try to find it and link it down below. That's a much older stamp. It does take a little bit of time to stamp those out, so you could just write them in. You don't need to stamp it, but I've added some little hearts or florals to there, some little staple details. Again, not necessary, but now I've done this enough times that when I go to do a scrapbooking page or go to do a Bible journaling page, I know that technique works, and I know to just grab for a small die cut piece and the label and my stapler, and I can make a little cluster, and it works because I've tried it before, if that makes sense. So again, just continuing the same clustering process. And then with the way that these days work out, I'm putting 3 days on the left side, 2 on the right side, and that leaves me a little bit of space down at the bottom where I can add some stamping or another paper cluster. So I'm going to use this tag from the Madison collection and this label from the Madison collection, and then this stamp says, I can do this. I love the positive affirmation type statements on this stamp set this month. So this, I can do this. Just a reminder, I can stick with this daily project. I'm doing it. I'm 3 weeks in, and I can stick with it. And so it's okay to encourage yourself in your projects as a reminder. So got that on there. I did use some archival ink to stamp that. The Felicity Jane die cuts do have a little bit of a coating on the front of them, and so I found that archival ink or STAYS-ON ink works best for stamping on those embellishment pieces. Now I'm just cutting off anything that might be hanging over the edge, and that is going to be it. So there it is, all filled in for the week. Each day I came in and wrote out my verses, and I love how this came out. I hope this inspires you to try a project like this. Check out the description box for links to everything that I used, as well as the link to the blog post for close-up photos. If you have any comments or questions, leave those down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.